So I've shared quite a few stories related to my family of origin in the past few weeks. Now, most of you know that by now that I'm from a large family. I have 4 brothers and 2 sisters, and I am the 6th in the sibling order. We are the first generation immigrants in our extended family here in North America. And we have close to 150 extended family members here in North America, including our cousins from Chung's and Kim's family, because my mother's last name is Kim. And we had our first family reunion back in 2014, only with Chung's direct family of origins. Close to 60 family members came. The first to 3rd generation Chung's family of origin gathered together to celebrate. And that was a lot of fun. Now, all of Chung's and Kim's family members, over 150 of them, from 1st to 3rd generation, owe a huge debt to my oldest brother. Now, in every family, at least one individual just tend to stand out, who has contributed most to the family, who has sacrificed a lot for the entire family well-being. Well, for us, it's my oldest brother. He is the pioneer and who paved the way for the rest of the family. My oldest brother is the first one who came to Canada back in 1960s, all by himself, worked as a miner in an uranium mine for 3 years, supported the family back in Korea, and then later helped to bring everyone, I'm talking about everyone, parents and siblings and entire cousins, Chung's and Kim's, to Canada. He's the one who brought everyone over and helped them to settle, helped them to find jobs, find houses, find churches, find careers, find life here in Canada. He is a patriarch of both Chung's and Kim's family of 4 generations. I would say he is Abraham for Chung's and Kim's family. And like Abraham, he sacrificed a lot, put his life on the line so that his extended family members can prosper here in Canada. Everyone in Chung's and Kim's family owes him a lot. Without his sacrifice, we would not be where we are. Our well-being and prosperity are rooted and drenched with the blood and sweat of his sacrifice. Our Abraham. So thank you, brother. Live long and healthy. So today I'm starting a new sermon series titled Generation to Generation, the stories of the first family dynasty in the Bible. And in the next 4 Sundays, I will cover the stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, 4 generations of patriarchs in the Bible. You see, as a descendants of Abrahamic faith tradition, we trace our faith back all the way to the first 4 patriarchs. They are the origin of our faith. Our faith stories are embedded and rooted in their faith stories. Our faith is woven into the web of faith that originated from them. So it's critical that we get to know their stories. So today I want to talk about the first patriarch, the father of our faith, Abraham. And I just want to get right into the thick of the faith issue found in Genesis 22. It's a story of sacrifice. God tells Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac, to sacrifice him as a burnt offering. So, who was Isaac? Well, he was the one promised by God to make Abraham's descendants numerous, the one who would take over Abraham, all his inheritance, all his dreams, and God's promise for all people. Isaac was the son God gave to Abraham and Sarah when Abraham was 100 years old. And after many years of pleading, many years of prayers, many years of waiting and frustration, God finally gave a gift of son to the couple, Isaac, a special child. The child who would inherit the family line, the gift that would confirm the covenant God made with Abraham and Sarah. But not long after Isaac was born, God says to Abraham, Abraham, give back that child. Sacrifice him. Okay, Abraham, you've had your fun. Now give me that. Give me that child. Sacrifice him. Well, so this is very difficult story to comprehend. A very strange and confusing command from God. Now, logically, it doesn't make sense. Isn't God contradicting God's promise here? Isn't God breaking the covenant God made with Abraham? Because Isaac was a promise barrier, covenant barrier. So it doesn't make any logical sense. And on a personal level, we wonder what kind of God would demand God's loyal servant to do such a thing. Commanding him to kill his own son? Not just any son, but the one who was born to carry out the promise, the special one, the precious one. So I don't get it. It's kind of confusing and absurd. I don't know. Maybe Abraham misheard that. You know, when you are like over 100 years old, you tend to hear things or mishear when someone says something, right? Maybe God wanted Ishmael instead, the one who was born from a slave maid, not Isaac, born from Sarah. Abraham just misheard it. He left his hearing aids at home and went out to a field and heard God say something, and he totally misheard it. What? Sacrifice Isaac? Or maybe God misspoke. Oops, I meant to say sacrifice a lamb, not Isaac. But since God is perfect, it would be totally silly for God to admit mistakes. So God just disappeared into heaven after God misspoke. Oops, I don't know. I'm baffled here, folks. And at the beginning of the passage, it says God wanted to test Abraham's faith. So that's another twist in the story. So we ask, is this how God tests God's loyal servants? If that's the case, what kind of a sick joke is this? I mean, why did God even give a gift in the first place if God will take it away later? If that's how God tests us, that's one cruel, sick, abusive, and bloodthirsty, hellish, evil monster than a God that I know, that I love, that I follow and worship. I don't believe in God like that. God of love would never do that, never ask God's people to obey such a cruel command. So that's our immediate reaction to the story. Well, at least my initial reaction to this story. It's so baffling how the God of love would demand such a cruel command. Now, we can stay with that understanding or we can move on from there. So let's get beyond that, folks. Let's not get stuck there, because if we do, we miss the bigger picture. We miss the heart of the matter. So let me propose that we step back a little from the present story and understand that context from broader perspective, because there's a bigger picture, there's a bigger story, the big story that proceeds, that undergirds and anchors this story, this command. Now, God created humans in a covenant relationship. We are in a sacred covenant relationship with other humans, with nature, and with God. Life will prosper if we keep that covenant. And the rule of the covenant is very simple. God says, your life will prosper, but there's a catch. There's a catch. There's no easy way in life. Life will not reward you for free. Life will reward you when you sacrifice, when you let go. The bigger sacrifice you offer, the bigger the reward will be for you and for the others around you. When we sacrifice, the world will be a better place for us and for all people. If we don't, the world will suffer. And I don't have to tell you that how our selfishness, how our consuming greed and hoarding resulted in disasters and much suffering for others and God's nature, and bring much suffering to us as well. Life will prosper for all if we sacrifice, if we let go. That's how the circle of life is connected. This through a covenant relationship. And sacrifice is a fuel that nurtures and helps lives to thrive. And there's no other way. There is no easy way in life. Why do you think God kicked Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden? Well, because they got everything for free. Life was too easy and too comfortable. Being pure and innocent was okay, but you've got to grow up. Not relying on your parents for everything forever. No rules, no restrictions, no barriers, just roaming free, playing video games all day long, sleeping late and waking up late, wearing nothing but underwear and shirt, and eating everything inside. I don't think so. So God said, that's it. These kids are cleaning out my entire food in my refrigerator, my garden, and even eating my favorite apples. I've got to draw the line here. I need to kick them out. It's too easy for them. They are getting too spoiled, too immature. They got to grow up. So God kicked them out of the garden to the wild, wild west world so that they can grow up, make something of themselves in the circle of life, from a paradise to a real world. It's a beginning of a human awakening, from a child to a grown-up, from immature being to responsible and mature human being. And the first thing God instituted for them in the real world was work. From now on, you must work to survive. And the land will not be so kind. You will sweat and sacrifice a lot. And if you do that, the land will reward you. Your life will prosper. There is no easy way. Life is hard, harsh, and often cruel. Life will not give you a freebie. You must work for it. You must sacrifice. Only then will life reward you and the others around you. You see, this life principle of covenant and sacrifice is hardwired into humans since humans began to form a circle of social relationships, from families to villages and tribes and nations. Our social contract demanded people to share, let go of something dear for the well-being of others in the wider community. Because for the villagers and the tribes to survive, you can't be selfish. You must work hard and share with others, even if it means that you might eat less. You might have to share your food with others or share your shelters. You sacrifice your possession, your time, and your energy, and your food, and your treasured items for the well-being of your family and your tribe. And you are constantly being required to offer sacrifices for the well-being of the greater good. Since ancient times, our ancestors have practiced sacrifice and sharing. The action came first. The implicit practice we see in the rituals of sacrifice came later and was instituted in religions and cultures worldwide, including our own Abrahamic religious traditions. Our Christian communion ritual is an implicit practice or ritual of the sacrifice Jesus offered for the well-being of all. The ultimate sacrifice in a covenant relationship. The action came first and the rituals. We participate in that ritual to remember not only the sacrifice Jesus made, but also remind ourselves that for the ultimate good, we must be willing to sacrifice all for the good of the world. We commit to follow the path and the sacrifice Jesus made. That's how we become the followers of the way. Covenant and sacrifice go together. That's how the life will prosper. So God established the covenant with Abraham. Abraham, I will multiply, prosper you and your generation. But it's not going to come easy, Abraham. You must sacrifice. You must let go. You let go what you cherish the most. Then life will prosper, not only for you, but for every one of you. God says, Abraham, sacrifice your son Isaac as a burnt offering. Now we know how the story ends. It ends happily. But the issue is not how the story ends, but how and why life imposes such harsh demand. But that's what life is, isn't it? Life is harsh. Life is cruel. When we say God is harsh, by reading a story like this, God, how can God be so harsh? What we are really saying is life is harsh. And at the same time, we are saying life shouldn't be harsh. Life should be easy. And we all know that life is not easy, not nice, not gentle, not good always. So it's not about what life does to us, but how we respond to life's harshness, life's cruel demand on us. When life demands us to let go, will we let go and offer everything for the good of all? Reality is that you don't keep your treasure forever. You receive and get something of values, and you don't get to keep it forever. You will face a time when you must give away. You must let go. There's time to grasp and time to let go. Life gives us treasure and takes them away from us. The question is, when life calls you to let go and give away even the most cherished treasures you have, will you let it go? Will you sacrifice your treasure? It's when we let go, when we sacrifice the path of the future. It's bright, not only for us, but for everyone. You know what? One thing about the whole stories in the Bible is that it's so realistic. So real. It doesn't shy away from life's difficult issues, does not try to sanitize, does not try to paint God as loving and holy all the time, because the reality is not all so rosy. If we insist that God should be like this and try to box God into our imaginary magic person, we can play that game. But we will always get bitter and resentful with God, with others, with the world, and with life itself. God commands Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. But we also know that the story doesn't end right there. We know that life is hard and life's demand on us can be brutal, but we also know that life doesn't end there. There's a bigger story. Abraham knew about this. He understood the bigger picture, understood his role in that picture, in that story, understood that God would never abandon the promise God made. Abraham knew that the reality is more than what happens to him. That God would always come through, that no matter how harsh, how unreasonable, how crazy the command was, he trusted that God would come through, that God would provide when he is willing to let go and sacrifice. That God, that life comes through. When Abraham was about to slay his son, the angel of the Lord said, Abraham, Abraham, do not harm the son. I have prepared the sheep for the offering. So Abraham took the lamb and offered the sacrifice and called that place Jehovah Jireh. The Lord will provide. Life will provide. Jehovah Jireh. God will provide. Life will provide. Provide in English. Pro means before. Vide means video. This means God, the life will see to it before it happens. God saw it through. God sees in advance the need is known. God has already prepared a way for our need. God tests us always. Life tests us always. Life is a series of testing ground. Will we come through? So what looms large in your life? What's that immediate concern, challenge, difficulty, barriers, tragedy, pain, worry, demand, or grief, life circumstance that looms large at this point, that takes away all your attention, that overwhelms all your senses, engulfs all your every waking and sleeping moment? What keeps you up at night? What casts a shadow on your day? What weighs you down heavy all day and night? What immobilizes you, freezes your life, engulfs and snuffs life out of you? What looms large in your life right now? Maybe it's time to step back, and see the big picture. The immediate circumstance you are in is not the whole story, is not the main story, is not the end of the story. Whether we die or live, whether the precious son is killed or lived, whether the mountain shakes and the stars fall from the sky, these are all parts of story, parts of event. Only thing that lives in eternity is God's covenant promise. I will make you a great nation, and I will see to it. I am Jehovah Jireh. I will come through. After all is said and done, we are left with the two choices: either to struggle with our circumstance as if it's the only thing that matters, or to trust God, God's covenant, to offer our story, our life to the one who will provide, and just walk our walk, climb our mountain, the mountain of God. And we will see that God comes through. And when that happens, it doesn't come as a surprise for us. For those of us who walk in faith, it just comes as reaffirmation, the reassurance of God's provision. We knew you would come through. Did Abram know? Maybe not, but he knew God. He knew God would not abandon, like God would not abandon his own son to death. For Abram, his son is already dead before he even lifted the knife. In his mind, son is already dead. But he knew that God would come through. Whether we find this story as what exactly happened literally or not, metaphorically, the story is the story that all of us go through in life. Instead of blaming God or blaming the reality for the harshness of reality, the life and reality keeps on asking us the question and asking our answers. What will you do when the reality turns this harsh? Will you trust that the life, that God would prevail at the end? And will you willing to sacrifice what you treasure the most for the greater